Hi, everyone. I'm Vladimir Dutit. We are watching all the news happening in the United States and around the world. You can see them all coming into the newsroom here. If it's happening there, it will be brought to you live right here. This is CBS News 24/7. Breaking this morning, Wall Street Journal reporter Evan Gershkovich sentenced to 16 years in a Russian prison on espionage charges. What we're hearing out of Moscow and from his employer. A global tech outage halts flights and cripples businesses nationwide. What Microsoft and CrowdStrike are saying about the cause. And more senior Democrats are calling for President Biden to step aside in the race for the White House. Who is the latest to speak out against the president's chances at re-election? We're going to tell you. All right, but let's begin with the breaking news. A Russian court has sentenced Wall Street Journal reporter Evan Gershkovich to 16 years in prison on espionage charges. The U.S. government and the Wall Street Journal deny the allegations and have repeatedly denounced the Russian trial as a sham. Let's get straight to CBS News senior foreign correspondent Elizabeth Palmer, who's joining me now to talk about this. So, Liz, were there any surprises in the verdict today?
Well, the guilty verdict was pretty much a foregone conclusion. Maybe a tiny surprise in that the Russian prosecutor had asked for 18 years and the court handed down 16. But come on, a very heavy sentence for a crime the U.S. government and the Wall Street Journal and Gershkovich himself say he didn't commit. He was arrested back in March of 2023, so he's already spent more than a year in a very notorious Moscow prison called Lefortovo. Originally, it was picked up on a reporting trip to the central Russian city of Yekaterinburg and charged with gathering intelligence for the CIA on a weapons manufacturer that makes some of the tanks that Russia uses in Ukraine. The Kremlin publicly claimed to have irrefutable evidence of his crime, but we just don't know what prosecutors presented in court because the proceedings have been closed to the media from the very beginning.
So, Liz, then what happens now?
President Putin hinted broadly in that now famous interview with Tucker Carlson that Russia would be willing to let Gershkovich go in a prisoner swap. And there has been some speculation that he could be traded for a notorious KGB agent who's currently doing jail time in Germany for a political assassination. The Russians also said no deal would be done until Gershkovich's trial is over. Well, that's now the case, but we just don't know whether it gets Evan Gershkovich any closer to freedom. The Wall Street Journal and the State Department are certainly still pressing hard for his release. In a statement today, the paper said, "Journalism is not a crime, and we will not rest until he's released. This must end now."
I think every journalist and every American feels exactly the same way. Liz, thank you very much. Appreciate it.
Pleasure.
All right, now to that massive tech outage that disrupted airlines and businesses worldwide. The Microsoft disruptions have been going on for hours now, leaving travelers stranded, payment systems down, and even some television channels unable to broadcast. So far this morning, more than 2,300 flights have been canceled and more than 23,000 have been delayed globally. CBS News Baltimore reporter Alexis Davila is at the airport over there following the story for us. So, Alexa, the cybersecurity company that suffered this outage says a fix has been deployed. They say it was really all the cause of a single line of code in an update that they were making. What are you seeing on the ground this morning?
All right. Levy, and I often recall, although this was not,
bring you over to New York City, where Mayor Eric Adams is briefing reporters on this outage. Let's listen.
Briefed by the former mayor. He says one of the major concerns is dealing with any form of IT outage, including if it is a cyber attack. We need to be prepared. And with that in mind, Chief of Staff Camille Joseph-Volok has been hosting a series of drills. We just recently did one to deal with any type of IT outage or cyber attack. And so it was good to see how quickly the team coordinated. CTO Smalls, Frazier called me around little after midnight last night and gave me a preliminary briefing that what was taking place, and reached out to the other team members, and everything kicked in gear. And you see the results of that from not only the notifications he made this morning, but also the coming together of the team. The blueprint was already in place. All we had to do was to execute on it. And just want to thank all these city agencies as well as our partners in other agencies like the MTA. And we're here to update New Yorkers on this global IT outage involving a CrowdStrike. CrowdStrike is a cybersecurity software prevalent in computers across the globe. Their goal, as the chief technology officer would explain, is to identify if there is a problem.
All right, you've been listening to New York City Mayor Eric Adams updating reporters on that global tech outage that we've been telling you about all morning long. CBS News Baltimore reporter Alexis Davila is at the airport in Baltimore following the story for us. So, Alexis, the cybersecurity company that suffered the outage says a fix has been deployed. What are you seeing on the ground there?
We're definitely still seeing much of mayhem that's happening here. You know, we kicked off this morning talking about more than 400 flight cancellations, according to FlightAware, and now we're talking more than 2,300. Take a look what it's doing right here at BWI Airport. We have travelers who are literally packing along the staircases here, and just look how big this crowd is growing minute by minute. We even have people who are crowding in the hallways, using their luggage as bedding, as so many have been stranded here, not just for hours. We're talking some who have been here overnight. Now, with that being said, we do know around 8:15 this morning, too, airport staff start to come out here and pass out water bottles for the travelers here. We also know that if anyone here is flying American, Delta, Spirit, or United, their flight is still not taking off. The systems are still down. Spirit Airlines even had to write out paper boarding passes for travelers. Now, Microsoft did say that they fixed the underlying problem to all of this. However, all of the systems that were still impacted is still in that mitigation mode, and that's why most of these airlines still have no answers for the customers. Now, with that being said, I do have a little bit of good news here. So here at BWI Airport, this is a Southwest hub. I spoke to airport staff and the spokesperson. They tell me that Southwest is actually an airline that is not impacted by this outage. So it's just a little bit of good news for some of the travelers. But unfortunately, we definitely have hundreds more who are still demanding for some answers. Vlad?
All right, Alexis reporting from BWI. Thank you. Appreciate it. All right, let's turn now to politics, where President Biden's COVID diagnosis has ramped up some new calls for him to step aside. Two senior House Democrats tell CBS News a decision could come in a matter of days. We also know high-profile Democrats are huddling about his prospects, including former President Barack Obama and former House Speaker Nancy Pelosi. Senate Majority Leader Chuck Schumer and House Minority Leader Hakeem Jeffries are also keeping a close eye on every lawmaker who joins the call for the president to quit the race. So for more on this, let's bring in CBS News White House reporter Willie James, who's in Rehoboth, Delaware, with the president. Willie, so is the president becoming more open to conversations about stepping aside? And if so, what are you hearing, if anything, about possible timing?
Hey there, Vlad. Well, behind the scenes, the president is hearing those concerns out with those multiple conversations reportedly taking place, as you mentioned, with top leaders within the Democratic Party, including former Speaker of the House Nancy Pelosi, Chuck Schumer, you name it. There's a list of Democrats who have not only sent letters to President Biden calling on him to step aside or reconsider his bid for the presidency, but also those top leaders expressing concerns to President Biden using polling and concerns from other Democrats, people within his own party, to essentially say that he might not be the best person to beat Donald Trump. But the president and the campaign are doubling down, digging in. We've seen the president, before his COVID-19 diagnosis, in multiple interviews say that he is still the man to beat Donald Trump. He says he wants to finish the job. He's been using that campaign slogan time and time again. And in fact, just moments ago, we heard from Biden campaign chair Jen O'Malley Dillon, who said that absolutely the president is in this race race. You've heard him say that time and time again. She also went on to say one of the reasons why President Biden is sticking with his bid for the White House again is because what we heard last night at the RNC, the Republican National Convention, that speech from former President Donald Trump, O'Malley Dillon, saying essentially because what we heard from Trump is nothing new. We know who he is. We know who he is from 2020. And that's one of the pivotal reasons as to why President Biden is staying in this race, she says.
All right, Willie James Inman for us in Rehoboth, Delaware, where the president is recuperating from COVID-19. Willie, thank you very much. Now to that big night at the RNC where former President Donald Trump and his running mate, J.D. Vance, gave a speech. It was his first President Trump speech since Saturday's attempt on his life. He accepted his party's nomination, and he spoke of unity while also repeating the attacks and the false claims that have helped divide the country. As he ended the speech, the crowd joined in, chanting "Win."
To all of the forgotten men and women who have been neglected, abandoned, and left behind, you will be forgotten no longer. We will press forward, and together we will win, win, win. Win, 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 win.
CBS News campaign reporter Olivia Rinaldi was in Milwaukee for the speech, and she joins me now. Olivia, so here's the thing. There are a lot of people who are saying a couple of things this morning. One, if the president had just stuck to the first 30 or 45 minutes of the speech, it would have been a home run. But he fell back into the old usual campaign rally statements that he's made in the past, ranging from that Hannibal Lecter line that he's used many, many times to suggesting that he could cure COVID, that he could cure Alzheimer's and cancer, that he could end the war in Ukraine with just a phone call. Describe what the atmosphere was like when the president sort of took to the stage and what it was like an hour and 30 minutes later after listening to all that.
Well, Vlad, it was a very raw and emotional moment when Donald Trump took the stage. It's really the first time that the American people have been able to hear from him since that near assassination attempt on his life. And you mentioned those first 30 to 45 minutes of the speech. You could hear a pin drop in that arena. People were locked in on what Trump was saying as he was recounting what he felt, what he went through on Saturday. And then, you know, he went into his normal speech and his nomination speech. And it was kind of what I was expecting to hear on Saturday before that near assassination attempt, repeating some of the same lines we always hear, the Hannibal Lecter line, the people coming across the border, America first, and economic policy agendas. And it started to rile the crowd up a little bit. So I think that was more of the goal there towards the end, was to get people riled, to get them going, trying to look forward towards November.
Yeah, so the other question, Olivia, is I wonder, for those of you who are tracking the former president and have been since he announced his campaign for the presidency, does it feel a bit as if the campaign was gaslighting reporters in all this talk leading up to this speech about unity and how the former president was going not to attack President Biden and that he was going to try to bring those other 50% of Americans who don't like him and don't want to see him become the president? We didn't really get a lot of that. In fact, he actually did call out President Biden by name, and then he used the pejoratives that he's used for Nancy Pelosi, and there were sort of a whole slew of things that he indicated, from the way he talked about immigrants to the way that he talked about his political opponents.
Perhaps gaslighting might not be the right word. I think the intention was to have a message of unity, and I think that was part of the message he was delivering at the top, is that he wants one America. He doesn't want to represent half of America. He wants to represent all of America. That's something he said. But Donald Trump is Donald Trump. He kind of reverted back into his old ways and delivering a speech that we've heard over and over and over again at these campaign rallies, kind of hitting on some of the remarks you said. You know, you can make all of these intentions of, we are going to make broad strokes unity arguments, and then just it becomes what it was, which is essentially a campaign rally.
Indeed. All right, Olivia Rinaldi, there in Milwaukee, having spent the entire time during the RNC there for us. Thank you, Olivia. Appreciate it as always. Okay, folks, now back to that massive tech outage that's disrupting tens of thousands of flights globally. CBS News Chicago reporter Mugo Odiwe is at Chicago O'Hare International Airport. She's following the latest for us there. So Mugo, O'Hare is a major connections airport for flights all across the country. What's the scene like there this morning? What was it like earlier and what's it like now?
So really, Vlad, what we've noticed is that most people are coming in like it's just another day, and they don't even know that this is happening, at least until we ask them, is your flight delayed or canceled? They pull out the United app, because we are at United's Terminal 1 right now. They pull out the app, they check it, and their flight says delayed. So it's really just been delay after delay. Some people are dealing with cancellations, but that's because their flight was initially delayed, delayed again, and then finally canceled. I'm going to step out of the way just to show you the first thing people will notice. Well, these are things that you typically just see at the airport, and you may not be paying attention unless you're trying to get some information. But all the screens out here have the same thing on it, saying recovery. And then if we look closer, it says something about a Windows system that is not working correctly. And that is what a lot of people are dealing with right now, is coming in and then realizing that, hey, their flight is delayed or it's canceled. We did reach out to United this morning. A spokesperson there says that while they are resuming some flights, they expect scheduled disruptions will continue throughout the day today. And they are offering waivers to customers who wish to change their travel plans. But as they work to restore their systems right now, many planes are being held at departure airports, and those flights are already airborne. Rather, the ones that are already airborne will continue to their destination. We also reached out to American Airlines. They told us, yes, initially this morning around 5 a.m. Eastern time, they had issues, but things have since been restored and regular operations has continued. The issue, though, obviously, is for people who have flights today, people who have places to be. They are having issues getting to their destinations. Many people just waiting at the gate. We actually spoke to a family from France. They're visiting the United States. Chicago was one of their stops. They were here and are heading to D.C. today, but then they were told their flight is canceled entirely. So for them, it's also just a waiting game to figure out when they can finally make it to their destination, Vlad.
Oh, boy. All right. Mugo Odiwe for us at Chicago's O'Hare. Thanks, Mugo. Appreciate it. A deadly strike in Tel Aviv. What we know about the drone strike and the group claiming responsibility. You're streaming CBS News 24/7. Folks, take a look at these pictures coming into the CBS News Broadcast Center. This is out of Israel, specifically Tel Aviv, where we're following developments this morning. A drone strike in that city killed one person and injured several others overnight. Iranian-backed Houthi rebels have claimed responsibility, saying it launched a strike in retaliation for the war in Gaza. CBS's foreign correspondent Deborah Pata is following all of the developments from us. She is joining us from Jerusalem to talk about this. So, Deborah, what more are you learning about this strike? Normally, Israel's Iron Dome can typically protect citizens from strikes like this. What have you learned?
Indeed, Vlad. Well, Israeli authorities say it was an Iranian-made drone that was fired from Yemen. Houthi rebels have claimed responsibility for the attack, which occurred just after 3 this morning local time. The drone was captured on camera as it pierced through Israel's air defense system and exploded in central Tel Aviv, just near the U.S. consulate, although it's not clear at this stage whether that was indeed the target. Now, we spoke to eyewitnesses who told us that they saw something flying towards them, and then a massive fireball lit up the street. Shrapnel killed one man and injured at least 10 people and shattered the windows of shops and apartments. Israeli police collected the drone debris, which was strewn across a wide radius, and dashcam footage captured the roar of this unmanned aircraft just moments before that explosion. The drone failed to trigger those warning sirens that you mentioned, which Israeli authorities say was in fact the result of human error. All previous Houthi attempts to launch drone attacks on Israel, Vlad, have in fact been intercepted.
Terrible news. All right, Deborah Pata reporting from Jerusalem for us this morning. Thank you very much, Deborah. Okay, we are following new updates on that probe into the attempted assassination of former President Donald Trump. A law enforcement source confirmed to CBS News that the gunman's father called police before the shooting, concerned about his son and his whereabouts. And our CBS News Confirmed team has learned more about agents' whereabouts during the incident. CBS News correspondent Charlie DeMar has been following the investigation from Butler, Pennsylvania, and joins me now. So, Charlie, update our viewers on where this investigation is.
And Vlad, good morning. Before we get into the investigation, in less than an hour, the community will be coming together for the funeral for Corey Comparator. The 50-year-old was shot and killed while attending the rally here. The retired firefighter, there will be a procession for him. There are fire trucks here from all over the country who will be leading that procession. His funeral is a private ceremony that's set to begin at about 11 o'clock. As for the investigation, sources tell us, sources who have been briefed on the investigation, tell us that the Secret Service had knowledge of a suspicious person about 20 minutes before the shooting took place. Former President Trump was allowed to take the stage at about 6 o'clock, and we're told that he was allowed to take the stage in the first place despite those reports of a suspicious person, because those reports didn't mention anything about a gun. About 10 minutes later is when the Secret Service was alerted to a disturbance on the right side of the former president. But by that time, it was too late, and those shots were fired just about a minute later. Now, we have done a lot of reporting on what police have found so far in the 2 phones recovered from the 20-year-old shooter, along with the searches for former President Trump, President Biden, when the DNC is next month. Investigators right now, we're told from sources, are trying to get access to an encrypted platform that the suspected shooter may have accessed. And those sources who've been briefed on this incident say that is taking some time right now and slowing up the investigation, or at least that aspect of the investigation. But hopefully that element of it will glean some insight into a possible motive, Vlad.
It is absolutely chilling, Charlie, to learn that the shooter may have also looked at images of President Biden as well as former President Trump. Charlie DeMar reporting from Butler, PA for us. Thank you, Charlie. All right, let's switch things up now and bring in CBS News Philadelphia meteorologist Kate Bilo with a first look at the national forecast. Kate, good to see you.
Good to see you too, Vlad. You know, we've got actually a beautiful day across the Northeast. We finally broke out of that extreme heat wave, but the heat continuing to build back in just in time for the weekend out over the Mountain West and much of the West as well. Let's take a look at what to expect today. Your forecast across the nation. Again, a relatively quiet start to the weekend here. We do have some showers and storms over parts of the Southeast. We've got some thunderstorms, even some severe storms over portions of the Northern Plains, but mild, dry, low humidity for the Northeast major cities. The heat can be found out west. Let's take a look at current temperatures or actual forecast highs today. And look at that. Where you see the pink, those are those excessive heat warnings. Again, 99 degrees, the forecast high today in Spokane, Washington, 105 in Boise, Idaho. And then as we continue further south, the heat building once again across spots like Las Vegas, where we're at 110 today, Needles at 117, Phoenix at 114 degrees, once again with excessive heat warnings. And there may even be some of those monsoonal type thunderstorms that fire up across the Four Corners region, which can lead to the risk for flash flooding. Across the rest of the nation, again, just some storms across the south and severe weather threat in parts of the plains today. This is going to head into the Northeast for part of the weekend. I'll have more on that coming up with a look at your full forecast. Vlad, I'll send it back to you.
All right, Kate, we'll check in with you just a bit later. Thanks so much. Some senior Democrats are calling for President Biden to drop out of the race for the White House. Coming up, what we're learning about when he may exit. You're streaming CBS News 24/7. Here are some of our top stories. Russia has sentenced Wall Street Journal reporter Evan Gershkovich to 16 years in a Russian prison on espionage charges. The Wall Street Journal says they will not rest until he's released and will continue to do everything possible to free him. Vice President Kamala Harris will campaign in Milwaukee on Tuesday as calls grow for President Biden to step aside in the race for the presidency. According to Politico, some of her allies are engaged in behind-the-scenes efforts to make sure she moves to the top of the Democratic ticket should President Biden exit the race. In an interview with the BBC, Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky says if Donald Trump is reelected, working with the former president would be hard because they are, quote, hard workers. Zelensky says he would be willing to work with anyone nominated as U.S. president. However, there are some concerns about the U.S. commitment to Ukraine if Trump takes the White House. His vice presidential nominee, J.D. Vance, previously has said he does not care what happens to Ukraine one way or another. As we've been following all morning long, President Biden is recovering from COVID, but pressure for him to drop out of the presidential race grows. And CBS News is learning that he could leave the race in a matter of days. That is, according to two senior House Democrats. So for more on this, let's bring in CBS News White House reporter Willie James Inman, who's in Rehoboth, Delaware, where the president is recuperating. So Willie, talk a little bit about how the campaign is working through all of this. But let's take a look at what's going on the Hill. If President Biden were to suspend his reelection bid, what do we know about what the plan is moving forward?
Hey there, Vlad. Well, the plan could potentially see this be a contested convention. But as you mentioned, there are some people behind the scenes who are close to the former vice president reportedly working to make sure that she moves up to the top of the ticket. This is something that the campaign doesn't want to happen. In fact, Jen O'Malley Dillon, she doubled down and said that President Biden is running to be president of the United States again. She also said that essentially part of the reason why he's running is because of what we heard last night at the Republican National Convention from former President Donald Trump. She alluded to his speech as being nothing new, essentially, that we've heard from this type of speech from the former president before, of course, him being the past president. But one of the things I want to point out is that not only the campaign is coming out publicly and saying that President Biden is not going anywhere, the president has also consistently said that he's not going anywhere either. Despite that, we are hearing those reports, as you alluded to, that behind the scenes, top Democrats, including former Speaker of the House Nancy Pelosi, Chuck Schumer, you name it, those top Democrats are not only talking to President Biden, meeting with President Biden, trying to convince him essentially that his chances are slim at beating former President Donald Trump, according to public polling, according to the temperature in the room. And you know as well as I do, we as reporters, we would love to be in that room, in those conversations. But of course, we have those conversations after the fact. We talk to our sources, and clearly there's this, I guess there's this aura around the president, or buzzards buzzing around his political career. And we have heard reportedly that his political career could end within days. But the campaign doubling down and saying that that is not the case, Vlad.
Yeah, we know that the president sees himself as a fighter. He sees himself as someone who's always painted as an underdog. But the polling doesn't lie, Willie, at least as far as we can tell. So we'll see what happens. Willie James Inman for us in Rehoboth. Thank you, Willie. Meanwhile, the Trump campaign, the Trump-Vance team is going full steam. The former president hitting the campaign trail after this speech to the RNC. CBS campaign reporter Jake Rosen was at the speech last night. So, Jake, at the start of the speech, there was a very touching moment. Trump took time to honor Corey Comparator, the firefighter who died during last weekend's rally. He also sort of gave a second-by-second account of what happened to him in those moments where a would-be assassin's bullet grazed his ear. What else stood out to you during his speech?
I thought it was pretty telling, Vlad, and thanks for having me on, that there was a shift after that kind of 20, 25-minute period back to a pretty classic Trump speech. Trump talked about the mass deportations that he would bring underway if he were to take the presidency again in January. He also talked about what his hopes are for his term and targeted Democrats and President Biden by name, despite a spokesperson telling CBS News that they would not do that last night, that they were calling on Democrats to stop the prosecutions of former President Trump. Obviously, we know that most of those have been shut down or, in one case, finished. But, Trump obviously attacking Democrats for the legal cases against him yet again, returning to that weaponization argument that he's had all along, kind of undercutting that original 30 minutes of unity.
Yeah, the other thing that struck me, Jake, was not only did the president pivot to sort of his greatest hits that he's used on the campaign trail. In fact, he's used them going all the way back to 2020. The drill, baby, drill, even though the United States is already one of the world's largest oil producers and has been for quite some time. Finishing the wall, closing down the border. The language that he used around immigrants was also classic Trump. But what I sort of thought to myself is, I remember thinking at one point, well, at some point he's going to articulate what Republican policies, what the Republican platform should be going forward, specifically as it relates to the one thing that we know suburban voters and independent voters are concerned about, the rights of women. But not once in his speech did he ever sort of talk about what he plans to do in his, should he be reelected, other than stopping the war in Ukraine with one phone call, or curing cancer and Alzheimer's disease. Very sort of broad strokes things, and very little, sort of nuggets that I think that people can sort of debate over at the kitchen table when they're trying to decide who to vote for.
Yeah, and this is reflected in the party's platform as well. The party platform in 2016 and 2020, for the first 8 years of Trump and Republicanism kind of merging, was a 60-page document that laid out paragraphs on things like abortion, on the economy, on taxation. The new platform is 15 pages, including 20 bullet points written by the former president at the top of that, basically, which is a academic version of a Trump speech, breaking it down into 20 bullet points with some details. And I think this is kind of what we've seen between kind of the speakers, whether it's Tucker Carlson, Kid Rock, Hulk Hogan, but also reflect in the policy that this is Trump's party. Trump's argument on abortion is clear. The campaign says that it's up to the states now, and just not banking on people to really read in depth on some of these things that Republicanism has become and was since Ronald Reagan.
Yeah, indeed. All right, Jake Rosen for us. Jake, thank you very much. Appreciate you. All right, now to one of our top stories this morning, that major IT outage that's impacting flights all around the world. The company behind the crash system says they've deployed a fix, but the struggles are still ongoing for many travelers across the country. CBS News transportation correspondent Chris Van Cleve is following all this for us. Chris, I know it was supposed to be your day off, my friend, but here you are reporting on this outage. You're stuck there anyway. So give us an update on what you're hearing from the airlines.
I'm being a very bad host today, Vlad, I'll tell you that. The airlines tell me they are working on it. One airline official I was talking to was sort of expressing some frustration because this update it's not like an over-the-air update where it's just being pushed out to everybody. They say that they're having to go in and reboot their systems and reboot and reboot and reboot until the update catches, and then it processes, and then that system eventually gets back to working. So it's been a very slow process, but United, American, Delta all have airplanes back in the air. They are sort of taking a crawl, walk, run approach here. What that means is you are seeing a lot of delays. You've seen a lot of cancellations, but I've been sort of picking and tracking random flights here and there, and I'm seeing more and more of them start to take off. Still, nearly 4,000 delays so far this morning. About 1,500 cancellations so far this morning. That's not a great day. And it started last night. Those folks that were going to take the red eye to the East Coast, they never left Los Angeles. So yeah, it's been a harrowing day for flyers, and it's not going to be a good one all day today.
Yeah, it's always wild to see that FlightAware map, Chris. I know you're familiar with it, where you see all the flights across the country, and as the outage happened, you see them all sort of dispersing. And I guess the thing that people don't often think about, especially if this doesn't directly affect you, is the ripple effect that this has, right? So you're not able to get on a flight now or even today, so you got to book another flight the next day, and it's not over even once these issues, these technology issues, are resolved. I know that you reported that some of the airlines are offering waivers to people. How is that gonna work?
So, assuming the technology works, right? Because we know some of the airlines, Sun Country and Spirit, have told us that they're having trouble rebooking people because of these issues. The major airlines have travel waivers up that basically says if you want to change your flight and travel another day, you can do that without additional cost. They'll let you change it, and you can go another day. And that might not be a bad idea if you have flexibility. They'll use tomorrow to catch up. Saturday tends to be a lower volume flying day, so there should be some extra capacity on those planes tomorrow. My guess is that they're going to try to operate a schedule today where at the end of the day, the planes are more or less where they would want them to be to start Saturday normally. And that's how you get back on track. That's how you keep this from being a multi-day event. You may have some people whose flights have been canceled that they may not get rebooked until Sunday just because of passenger loads and things. But their hope is certainly that, one, the systems work, and two, that they're able to hit the reset button essentially tomorrow morning and go after it. But, we're going to see ripples effect here. FedEx just told us that they're seeing implications here, and that means package delays could happen. So your overnight package might not be overnight. We did talk to the TSA. They tell us their operations are not being affected at the airports, but they're seeing busier bursts of people show up because of everything sort of being out of sorts. So they're saying get to the airport early, even though you'll probably end up waiting for your delayed flight.
All right. Chris Van Cleve, thank you, friend. Appreciate you. Thanks. In just a few minutes, a funeral service will begin for the victim killed during the attempted assassination on Donald Trump. More details next. You're streaming CBS News 24/7. This morning, a private funeral is being held for Corey Comparator, the former Buffalo Township fire chief and dad who died protecting his family from gunfire at the Trump rally on Saturday. It comes after thousands gathered yesterday to pay their respects in a public memorial. CBS News reporter Amelia Mugavero is following the funeral procession and joins me now from Buffalo Township, Pennsylvania. Amelia, thanks for joining us. Have you spoken to some of his friends or some of his loved ones, and if so, what are they telling you?
Vlad, good morning. Honestly, no, we haven't spoken to those closest to him just because they've wanted privacy during these very difficult days, and understandably. However, we did get a statement from the family yesterday. They really took the time to thank the community. They say they've been getting messages from not only in the town of Buffalo Township, not only Pennsylvania, but all across the country and all across the world. So they really wanted to take the time to just thank everybody for their prayers and support at this time. And the support is definitely what we saw today. Just about an hour and a half ago, we saw a large funeral procession of firefighters, first responders, bikers, volunteers, fellow veterans, people who might not even know Corey, but knew of him and wanted to be here today. So that procession just took place, like I said, about an hour and a half ago, down this road. They went to Corey's home, and then they also went in front of the Buffalo Township Fire Department, where Corey was a firefighter for more than 3 decades. So Corey Comparator's casket was obviously in tow in that procession. And just imagine, we're taking a look at this road right now. You can see the American flags, just the show of support from the community. These flags have been out for several days now. And then just imagine this whole street lined with people. That is what we saw. People who knew Corey, knew his family, and then also did not know Corey. So we just saw an overwhelming show of support. Also a sense of mourning in this town, obviously, because Corey was very beloved by this community. He was a father, he was a dad, he was a firefighter, he was a veteran. He was just so much to so many people out here. I do want to end with one kind of heartwarming tidbit. When I was talking to the veteran bikers out here, they're part of a veteran group, all volunteer-based. They told me that when they heard Corey's story, it was an immediate, we have to be there. We have to be here. We have to show his support. Some of them coming from 300 miles away, some of them coming from all the way on the other side of Pennsylvania, riding their bikes here just to show solidarity for a fellow veteran and for a fellow human, because they were saying that Corey to them was a hero, and that's exactly how they want to remember him. So very, very, a lot of love here in the area of Buffalo Township. Back to you, Vlad.
Yeah, not just a hero to them, Amelia, but as you know, a hero to his wife and his young children. He died trying to protect them from a would-be assassin's bullet. Amelia, thank you so much. Appreciate your reporting. Okay, we're continuing to follow the impact that global tech outage is having on businesses and specifically airlines around the world, around the country. We'll be right back. You're streaming CBS News 24/7. All right, as we've been tracking all morning long, major airport disruptions after that global tech outage hit airlines and businesses. As of right now, more than 4,000 U.S. flights are still delayed, and already 1,600 have been canceled. CBS News Pittsburgh reporter Chaleski Delier is following the very latest for us.
Here at Pittsburgh International Airport, it's almost a tale of two different sides of the ticketing counters. On this side, as I'm going to get out of the way, you can see Delta, JetBlue, Spirit, United, Air Canada, Alaska Airlines. There's a lot of long lines here as people are trying to check in bags, check in their tickets. This Microsoft outage is really causing issues at this airport in terms of people trying to get to where they're going. American and Southwest actually aren't having that many issues, but it seems to be limited to this side right now. American says in a statement that is in contact with planes that are currently in flight. It has put a ground stop in place. Delta and United are also some of the airlines issuing ground stops as well. This outage is affecting Microsoft's cloud services. It appears to be affecting its cybersecurity program, CrowdStrike. Now, it has led to outages with low-cost air carriers as well. Frontier Airlines did say late last night that it had lifted its ground stop. Outages have affected websites and booking for carriers like Allegiant and Sun Country as well. As we try and bring you the news this morning, there are so many things. OneDrive, SharePoint, Word that run on Microsoft technology. We also have security programs that help to secure our Microsoft computers as well. And again, this morning, a lot of people have come up to us. They're asking what's going on, what's happening, and we're having to tell that news to them because a lot of people simply haven't seen it. It's certainly something that it's going to affect a lot more of the world, and we're going to see the ramifications of all of this once people start to wake up, get to work, try and get where they're going. At Pittsburgh International Airport, I'm Chillicothe Dele, CBS News, Pittsburgh.
All right, Chillicothe, thank you very, very much. Today, we remember comedian Bob Newhart, who died yesterday at the age of 94. His publicist says he died in Los Angeles after a series of illnesses. Newhart's career in show business began in the 1960s when his album, The Button-Down Mind of Bob Newhart, rose to #1 on the Billboard charts. It was the first comedy album to ever hit the top spot. He's, of course, well known for his sitcom, The Bob Newhart Show, which lasted for 142 episodes. Also, The Newhart Show. There were many iterations of his classic style of comedy, all on CBS. We remember the legendary Bob Newhart. Former Fox News and political commentator Lou Dobbs has died at the age of 78. Former President Donald Trump announced the news on his Truth Social account, calling him a friend and an incredible journalist. His words: Fox News says they are deeply saddened to hear of his passing and said he had a gift for broadcasting. Okay, let's bring in CBS News Philadelphia meteorologist Kate Bilo with one last look at the national forecast. Kate.
Thank you so much, Vlad. Yeah, we're heading into the weekend, and for much of the country, it's actually pretty quiet outside here as we go into the weekend, which is some pretty good news. Let's take a look at current temperatures outside, and what I want you to note first and foremost, the Northeast. The Northeast is actually finally feeling comfortable after days and days of heat. We're looking at 74 in Cincinnati. Right now, it's 77 degrees in New York City, and again, after days of heat, things have really started to improve. In fact, look at the difference here across many of our major eastern metropolitan areas like Philadelphia. Here in Philadelphia, we hit 98 degrees on Tuesday. Today's high, 86. Look at D.C., 101 on Tuesday. Today's high, 87. Baltimore went from 104 on Tuesday to the 80s as well. So comfort has arrived just in time for the weekend across the Northeast. Where it has not arrived, the desert Southwest and parts of the Pacific Northwest. You can see high temperatures today in Phoenix, 114. Las Vegas, 109 degrees. And it's only going to keep building. We've got triple-digit highs in spots like Boise and Lewiston today. Tomorrow, the heat builds even closer to the Cascades. We're looking at triple-digit temperatures even in Bend, Oregon. And Sunday, more of the same with Lewiston headed for 111 degrees. The heat doesn't really look to break until next Tuesday there. Meantime, we've got the threat for severe weather across the Central Plains today, mainly portions of Kansas and Nebraska, where you see that brown shaded area. That is where storms could get nasty this afternoon. We're looking at the potential for damaging straight line winds and hail, along with a few isolated tornadoes. So your national forecast, the heat's there in the west, pretty quiet down across the south, although just a few showers, and a beautiful day across the Northeast. Vlad, I'll send it back to you. Have a great weekend.
All right, Kate, finally some good news. Appreciate it. Have a nice weekend. All right, an encore of CBS Mornings is coming up next. This is CBS News 24/7.